Rabbi Meir of Parmishlian. He was one of the pupils of the Baal Shem Tov. He was a very holy miracle worker. Anyway, so the story goes that he lived on a mountain, a high hill, whatever, very steep. And at the foot of this hill was a yeshiva of boys that were not Chassidic boys. They weren't Chassidim. And they used to sort of scoff at him. Big tzaddik, big holy man. By then, there was no such thing as a holy Jew. There were people who were Torah scholars, and the more Torah that you knew, the more you deserved respect and awe and etc. But this idea of, giving blessings and things like that. So here we have this Hasidic Jew. So they would see every morning, and then he would go to this mikveh. He would come down from where he lived or where he was. He would come down the side of this steep hill or mountain, whatever, and he would. There was a spring, a wellspring, whatever, in the side of this mountain somewhere, and he would immerse himself there. He would immerse himself in this mikveh. Maybe it could be there was a gathering of water that when the snow melted, it came down, whatever it was. But it was a regular a mikveh, and he would immerse himself. The Hasidic Jews, they tried to go to the mikveh every day before prayer, because the idea of a mikveh is it's like a very small swimming pool. They call it a ritual bath. And women go there, married women, once a month to this ritual bath. And it's a very main thing in Judaism. It says that if you come to a city, the first thing that you should build there is a mikveh before you build a synagogue or whatever. Mikveh is tremendously important in Judaism. That's for the women, but the Hasidim also used it. They would go every day before prayer. And so he would go. Of course, it wasn't always available, especially in communist Russia. There's a lot of stories, but so he would go every day. So these boys in the yeshiva that was at the bottom, they were sort of scoffing at him anyway, and they looked at him through whatever it is, binoculars or a telescope or something, and they saw he was coming down the side of this mountain. But when it came to the winter, so there was snow and it was like slippery, and they saw that he would come down the mountain, and he seemed at the same rate as he would in the summer. So they figured that must be that there was places that he had made steps or that signs where he knew exactly where to walk. And others were saying no, and others were saying yes, and it became a lively conversation until finally one of them dared the other one of the boys, and that he says, I know that there's some sort of a secret that he does. And other boys were saying, no, I think that maybe some sort of a miraculous thing that's happening over here. And one boy laughed and he scoffed. And so he said, okay, you think it's some sort of a trick? Let's say you do it. So sure enough, that's what the boy did. He waited, after the rabbi finished, he watched day after day, he watched exactly where he put his feet. He made it in his mind. He even made a little map where to put his feet over there, the signs. He went up on the side of the mountain, and he started going down exactly where the rabbi put his feet. And as soon as he did the first one, he slipped and he fell, and he broke several bones, and it was a miracle. He was at the bottom. They had to take him to the hospital. So Rabbi Meir of Parmishlian came to visit him in the hospital. He said, I heard you tried to come down to the side of the mountain, you slipped. What did you do that for? So he said, I'll confess, I'll tell you the truth. We saw you coming down every day. And there was a whole argument developed if there was some sort of a secret, or there was no secret, or if it was a miracle, there was no miracle, how exactly it would come down. And finally, it came out to a dare. And I accepted the dare, and I figured that, I looked exactly where you put your feet. I saw where you put your feet. And I that's what I did. I put my feet there exactly in the place. And I slipped and I fell. What is your secret, Rabbi? You have some sort of special shoes, maybe some sort of, because it can't be some special place. I put my feet exactly where they do. And the rabbi said, "Oh, don't you understand? When you're tied up above, you don't fall below." In other words, he didn't really explain it, give an answer. But what he was saying was is that it was more miracle than nature. In other words, my desire to go to the mikvah was only in order to serve God. And that's one of the ways that facilitates serving God. So every step that I took was only in order to serve the Creator better, that it would enhance my ability to concentrate on God and to think about God and to pray to God. So when you're tied up above, and then you're not afraid of what's below. Okay, so like I said, it wasn't really an answer because it didn't really explain, how it is, what power exactly was it that kept him from falling. But what he's saying, the power that kept him from falling was his devotion to God and God's care for him. Okay, so the point of the story is, it seems to me, that the Baal Shem Tov said, the father of the Baal Shem Tov said to the Baal Shem Tov on his deathbed, his father was on his deathbed, and he said to his son when he was 5 years old, according to, I saw another place, 3 years old, he said, "My message to you is, don't be afraid of anything except for God. Don't be afraid of anything except for God." How can you not be afraid of anything except for God? What does that mean? I mean, you should just run into the street and cars won't hit you. You can jump off of buildings. No, no. First of all, you should fear God. And God doesn't want you to run in the middle of the street or jump off of buildings. Have the fear of God. In other words, you don't want to do anything that against what God expects. God wants you to do good things, do those things. God wants you to refrain from bad things, refrain from those things. That's the fear. You should fear God. That's why he said, the Yamokim. You should realize that God, he's the main thing. Instead of being afraid of yourself, God, he creates you. He knows what's best for you. Right. But when you are afraid of God, then you won't be afraid of anything else. Or at least it enables you to have an alternative to fearing other things. So I sort of extrapolated this and I made up a saying for myself that before you do something that you really want to do, that you really have a desire for, you eat a nice piece of cake. So check yourself out 10 times. Is this really what God wants? And if you, in the end, you say, yeah, then you do it. But before you are afraid of anything, you should check yourself out 100 times. Is this really something that I should be afraid of? Is this really something that should control my life? Fear? Because fear is a terrible thing. Fear negates you totally. That's what he was saying. If you're attached above, then you won't fall below. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, see you all tomorrow, God willing, 8:15.